Hi everyone, sounds good. Welcome to my channel. Today we will be looking at CICD Cloud Native Tekton, what Tekton solves and why we need it. If you like my content, please hit notification bell and subscribe to my channel. Now let's start by going continuous integration and delivery, because Tekton and other tools solves the continuous integration and delivery, which is also known as CICD. Now the traditional CICD over here, I'm just comparing with Jenkins, but it might be GitLab, Circle CI, Azure Pipeline, and any other CI/CD tools. The difference is we're gonna achieve the same output but in different ways, because if you use a traditional CI/CD, we will also get the same output but in a different ways. That's what the difference between Tekton and Jenkins over here. Started the basic overview of what is CI/CD, Kubernetes, Jenkins, and Tekton. Over here, we are not going deep into CI/CD or Kubernetes. This video is just an overview of what we needed. So CI/CD is a process of automating your software deployment through testing, building, and delivery. Now Kubernetes, if you have worked with microservice architecture and you are deploying your applications in container, you need to know Kubernetes, because Kubernetes is the management tool for containers. So it does container orchestration. Now Jenkins and Tekton, they are the two CI/CD tools designed to create what we call CI/CD pipeline. Let's do a comparison between a traditional CI/CD and cloud native CI/CD. I'm just comparing here against the Jenkins and Tekton, but it might be traditional, might be anything that uses a virtual machines. So in traditional CI/CD is designed for virtual machines, and it requires an IT OOPS for CI engine maintenance. It means there are people involved in maintenance. And Jenkins, which is solely based on Java language, but it has a very good features of adding the plugins. So in traditional CI/CD such as Jenkins, you have lots of thousands plugins available, and you are sharing a plugins to run for different applications, and your cycle is wholly depend on the plugins. And if you need any storage, you need to deal with an admin managed persistence. So admin needs to privilege a storage. However, in cloud native CI/CD, this is totally opposite. It's designed for container and Kubernetes, so you don't need to manage our resources. It has been done by Kubernetes, and it is a pipeline as service. There is no OOPS overhead, and pipelines are fully isolated from each other, so you can use different talks or different steps in the pipelines. They are not related to each other, and you don't need to duplicate. And everything in cloud native CI/CD is cycle based on the container lifecycle, and the resources are fully dependent on Kubernetes. To really understand the Tekton, we need to know the knowledge of Kubernetes, because Tekton runs in Kubernetes. Because the Tekton runs in the Kubernetes, so it skips all the custom resources that required for Tekton to run the pipelines, which makes really easy for testing, deployment, management, and monitoring, because they are inside the same cluster. Now let's start the basic building block of Tekton. To make it even simpler, we will use an example of deploying an application from development to test. So this process usually consists of, we will test the application. So it is test, then we will build the application, then we will deploy the application. Now in Tekton, each steps is this one become steps. Now to manage the steps, we have a tasks. Now each task may be a multiple steps. The steps can be writing an script or performing some actions or taking some input and output. Now in Tekton we have a concept of resources, that a task can also get an input and it can also produce an output. So for example, for getting an input, it might be a git URL to clone the URL in some of the directory. That might be one of the steps in the task. Now the output might be building a Docker file from the build process, and it's maybe output over here. So each task has the input and output. Now this brings me to the another concept, which is a pipelines. Pipelines is to better manage the tasks. We have a pipeline. Now a pipeline, it consists of number of tasks. So a pipeline can have cloning a repo in this tasks, or building a Docker file, or deploying an applications. So the basic concept is a task will have a multiple steps and pipelines will have a change of tasks. Now in Tekton, how do you initiate a task? To initiate a task, we have a task runner. So each task can be triggered using a task run. Now we also do have a pipeline run as well to initiate a pipelines. So when you write a pipelines, how does it runs? So we have another building block which is known as the pipeline run. Automate this thing. You automate this thing either by Tekton CLI or Tekton UI. The Tekton UI also provides a dashboard from where we can manage all those things. Or you can use a Tekton CLI, but we will use in the later videos a kubectl from Kubernetes. So we can use the kubectl command to manage and monitor and deploy and run the pipelines from a Tekton. So even we can further automate the system. We have a concept called trigger. So to better manage the pipelines, we have a trigger. Now the trigger can be when a developer push a code to a Git repo. At that time, you want to test your application, then you want to build your application, and you want to deploy the changes. So this can be a trigger process. We can also refer other control versions such as GitHub, GitLab, or any other privates. So this is the basic building block of Tekton. We have a task that consists of steps, and to initiate a task we need a task runner. Then to better manage the tasks, which is a pipelines. Now pipelines consists of multiple change of tasks, and to initiate a pipeline we need a pipeline runner. Even we can further automate the systems, like for example pushing something or deploying a Docker image to a container registry. Then we want to trigger the deployment process, we have a trigger. So this is the basic building block of Tekton. In the further videos we will use Kubernetes in our local environment, and we will set up everything for a Java application. And this was the basic concept of Tekton. In the later videos we will be using the Tekton to set up a pipelines, to do a test, build, deploy a Java application in GCP environment.